You're sitting in a meeting, someone makes a claim, and before they even finish their sentence, you've completely dismissed them. You feel sharp, you feel decisive. But what if you're not actually thinking? What if you're just judging too quickly? Welcome to this explainer on Anthony Weston's book, A Rule Book for Arguments. Today we're deconstructing why that fast dismissal might actually be weakening your mind. A rulebook for arguments isn't some manual for how to rage or score cheap debate points. It's about building a small architecture of reasons to stop the mind from lying fast. Let's get into it.
That brings us to a really uncomfortable question. Are you losing arguments or just judging too soon? We constantly mistake this fast dismissal for sharp discernment. We validate ourselves thinking we're seeing clearly. But the reality? Our own thinking is shrinking down to nothing but a hasty prepackaged verdict. The invisible critic inside us moves way faster than the actual thinker. It checks for tone, it checks for confidence, and then it immediately files a verdict. Once that happens, your reasons just become loyal servants to that initial knee-jerk reaction. Let's start breaking that habit right now.
Act 1. The False Foundation. We're going to challenge this underlying, almost universal belief that confidence and a quick reaction are indicators of intellectual strength. The very first lie we tell ourselves in an argument is rarely a false fact. No, it's a false posture. It's this arrogant posture that says, I already know, or this person is entirely beneath my inspection. We accept brute force as a foundation, and let me tell you, that is an incredibly dangerous place to build from.
Consider this idea from Anthony Weston. A claim is not a beam. Just because a statement is delivered with absolute, unwavering confidence doesn't mean it can actually carry any structural weight. Your judgment cannot carry the weight of a claim for you. Without visible support, a claim is just floating in midair. It's not bold at all. So, the absolutely crucial point here is that a strong mind isn't the one that spots weakness and attacks first. The strong mind asks, what load does this claim actually carry?
Let's move to Act 2, Inspecting the Load Path. We need to explore the hidden cost of our quick judgments and figure out how we can actually start inspecting an argument's true load path. Because when you judge first, you stop inspecting. And when you stop inspecting, you are essentially renting out your mind to the loudest signal in the room. We can clearly see this trap when we compare what we call the clever person's path to the rule-based mind. The clever path involves judging the speaker and outsourcing your thought to status. Tone becomes evidence, familiarity becomes truth, and suddenly you've completely lost the argument itself. Relying on tone or status is just renting your mind out to the loudest signal. True strategy, on the other hand, separates the signal from the status. The rule-based mind slows down the frame, asks what supports the claim, and carefully traces the load.
To help with this, a rulebook for arguments provides a clinical, step-by-step structural inspection protocol to literally slow down your brain. This ensures that your final rejection or your acceptance is actually earned. The sequence absolutely matters here. 1. Claim. 2. Reason. 3. Evidence. 4. Bridge. 5. Objection. And 6. Verdict. Most bad arguments hide at that very basic first level. They slide between claims or constantly change their terms. But when you meticulously list the reasons and test the evidence step by step, you demand that the structure stands upright before you ever issue a judgment.
This brings us right to step 4 on our list, the warrant. This is the hidden bridge between the reason and the conclusion. We see people fighting over facts all the time, right? But the real dispute is almost always this hidden bridge, the completely invisible assumption that turns a simple fact into a final verdict. A bridge can look incredibly elegant and still entirely fail. The reason could be true, the evidence completely real, but the conclusion still might not follow. The goal is to make that invisible assumption visible so it can actually be tested and, if necessary, repaired.
So how do we test that bridge fairly? We use charity. Now, this isn't about being nice. Charity is the discipline of aiming your critique at the strongest version of a claim. By redefining charity, we see it's absolutely not about being kind to nonsense. It's about earning the right to criticize by testing the strongest possible architecture of your opponent's claim. If you can't state the other side's claim cleanly without a hint of sarcasm, you simply haven't earned your attack. Careless mockery just weakens the mocker. It trains your hand to strike at fog. Charity ensures your criticism hits the actual target.
Now we enter Act 3, Objections as Design Load. We need to completely flip how we view resistance and objections to our own ideas. A weak thinker hides from objections, but a serious thinker, they invite the right ones. They realize that every single strong argument absolutely requires resistance to prove its strength.
Consider this perspective. A counterexample is weather. A serious thinker doesn't view objections as personal threats. They view them as necessary weather to test if their structural foundation survives the wind and the water. An objection is wind. A missing premise is water under the foundation. If your structure cannot meet them, it was frankly never strong to begin with. You literally have to make resistance a deliberate part of your design. Which leads us to a fascinating question. What is your exit condition? You have to ask yourself what specific evidence would force you to revise your most treasured view. Because if you don't know, your belief is just a locked room entirely lacking intellectual oxygen. Without an exit door, your certainty just spreads like water, filling every gap until doubt looks immoral. Having an exit condition doesn't weaken your belief at all. It gives it a healthy boundary and keeps your mind open to actually learning. Think of a beautiful building where the facade looks utterly perfect because the foundation is hidden. Bad arguments can easily win a room. They can look perfectly clean on the surface, but life settles on the foundation. And if that base cracks, the surface success means absolutely nothing. Elegant heirs can wear good diction, they can quote experts, but if you don't test the foundation, you're just living in a beautiful house that is just waiting to collapse.
Welcome to Act 4, the turn to proportion.
The immature mind asks how to win, but the refined mind, it asks what survives inspection. That brings us to the discipline of proportion. Winning can actually reward distortion, while inspection punishes it. This is where we have to train a completely different intellectual appetite. Strategic thinking means treating your judgment as resource allocation. You're ensuring your level of certainty perfectly aligns with the weight of your support. Small evidence earns small confidence. Wider evidence earns wider confidence. Mixed evidence earns patience. You don't mortgage your entire identity to an untested premise. Certainty might give you temporary relief, but proportion gives you lasting responsibility.
The ultimate trap of the ego is believing that speed is clarity. It is dangerously easy to mistake a fast, sharp response for clear thinking. But earlier is not clearer, and louder is certainly not stronger. I think we've all been there, right? Finding a flaw fast, delivering a sharp sentence, and leaving the room feeling like we totally won. But finishing earlier isn't thinking better. Speed just creates false clarity.
So, here is the turn. The verdict is the last brick. The trained mind creates a chamber of delay where inspection happens, proving that the sequence of construction matters far more than the rush to finish. Inside that chamber, you rewrite the claim, you search for the best objection, and you test the bridge. When you finally speak, your sentence might be shorter, it might be a little less dramatic, but I promise you it will be much harder to break.
Finally, we arrive at Act 5, the final structure. To truly rebuild the concept of an argument, not as a weapon of ego, but as a load-bearing architecture, we have to put it into practice. Argument isn't the art of looking unshaken. It's the craft of repairing what cannot hold. Here is a practical 4-move sequence for your daily life. Compress the claim. Sort the support. Test the bridge. And state the objection. Before you reply to that email, post online, or speak up in a meeting, apply this fast repair sequence. If you do, disagreement stops being a personal insult and becomes a mutual inspection. It keeps small errors from hardening into your character.
And finally, we arrive at our core philosophy for this explainer of a rulebook for arguments. Reasons outrank reactions. In your next hard conversation, will you let your ego speak first, or will you build a mind strong enough to demand that reasons outrank reactions? You weren't protecting truth by judging first. You were just protecting your identity from having to inspect the truth. Carry this intellectual refinement with you. Build the practice where your mind no longer needs contempt to feel strong. What long-held verdict of yours might collapse if you forced it to finally show its load-bearing reasons? Continue the intellectual transformation at upgowise.com.